r/AskReddit. Teachers who quit. When was the moment you realized that it wasn't for you? Presented by Redditous. Know me but my wife. She was an engineer at a good company on the East Coast. Left because she wanted more rewarding work. Soon after, she is doing clinicals at a school on the rough side of our hometown. She was the kind of student teacher who showed up early, ate lunch with the kids, stayed late, and followed up with parents. Anyway, some months in, she has repeatedly had trouble with some students. They came from troubled homes and brought a lot with them into the class each day. She tried working with them one-on-one, working with the administration and the parents. More than one set of parents said stop calling, and the administration told her to send them to the principal's office, where they could sit all day and focus on the good kids. Eventually, the futility set in. She was the only one who cared. Not the kids, administration, other teachers, or even their parents. She finally wore herself out after a couple years with no support at work and no one appreciating her efforts, except me of course. She's back in aerospace now. That's actually better than most schools. At my GF's school, admin's response was too bad. Deal with it until it rose to the point of having to call police. Touching students equals fired, so the only recourse in fights was to call the police, even on kindergartners. I worked in a high needs behavior class. I got hit, punched, scratched and spat on daily, but every day I went back and did my best for those kids. I was so battered and bruised that my husband wouldn't shop with me anymore because people would stare and sometimes even comment to him about his mistreating me. It was sickening, but I loved my job and every one of those kids. One day was called to the office to talk. It was Christmas time and things weren't great at home. And as anyone with kids knows, the holidays makes children especially high-strung, so things were also wild in the classroom. My boss said you seem awfully stressed, and I thought how nice of her to notice, so I agreed that yes, I was struggling. She said you have 6 weeks to sort it out, or I'll have to let you go. I was crushed. It literally broke me 6 weeks to get less stressed. How does that even work? I found myself just showing up to show up, and I realized that wasn't fair for me or for the kids. 6 weeks later, I get a call back to the office. I'm congratulated on the amazing turnaround and sent back to class. I was baffled. I was more upset and stressed than ever, and they congratulate me. More and more I showed up to work just for the paycheck. One day I just decided screw it. I wasn't a teacher anymore, I was a robot fearful of showing any negativity. I quit that week. Never went back to teaching. My wife is a teacher and I'm a manager. The problem with principals and other administrators is a classic problem. They are good teachers, so they get promoted to management. The problem is that teaching and management are two entirely different skills. You got into teaching because you are good at it, not because you are good at managing adults. In this example, it doesn't sound like she was given any concrete direction on improving. How does she exactly demonstrate being less stressed? Is there some magic number she needs to hit? Secondly, let's say it's week 3. How will she know she is on target? Thirdly, why is she now getting a warning of termination when she hadn't been spoken to before? This is all stuff that an unskilled manager might do. A more skilled one would be, we noticed you're feeling stressed lately. Why do you think that is? I see. Well, I wanted to talk to you today because your stress level is affecting your work. Here are some examples of things that are going wrong. So we need to see improvements on this behavior. If we don't see improvements by X, we will have to terminate you. To stop that from happening, we will meet bi-weekly to talk about your progress, so you'll know if you're on track or not. Of course, I'm here to help you be successful, so let me know how I can help. Edit. Wow. Lots of responses to this. I just want to clarify one point. I'm not saying that teachers can't become good managers. I'm not saying that single contributors can never become good managers in general. This is just a general problem that many organizations face. If you're one of the best single contributors, you eventually peak at salary and responsibility, and the only way to move up is to take a management position. Then the organization had to replace you with someone who probably won't be as good, and instead of having one good single contributor, they have a mediocre manager and a mediocre single contributor. Side note, not saying there is absolutely no transfer of skills from a teacher to a manager. There is. Coaching, teaching, explaining expectations, etc. are all skills that are similar. But there's much more to management than that. I'm definitely not saying managers with no education background so go become administrators of schools. This presents a slew of other problems, as some folks are pointing out. I don't know what the solution is, but it could be improving how administrators are trained, or doing more to identify and develop teachers who could be good administrators and track them in a way to give them mentoring and training opportunities to improve their management skills and give them good feedback when they are on the job. Taught at a juvenile delinquent school when the accusations of children required no proof or consistency, and to be exonerated took divine intervention. When a kid with a violent history a mile wrong swings a stapler at you, gashing your forehead because he was dead too, then as you restrain him until help arrives, you hurt his wrist, then your school believes his story that I dropped the N-bomb to him, which caused the outburst, even though 2 other staff members saw the entire thing. And the school called the police and tried to have me charged for assault. When I realized that I was being more micromanaged every year, I expected a lot of oversight. When I was a new teacher, I actually had more people watching my every move and every word after a master's degree and 15 years experience. I never had a single complaint. Parents and students loved me, even requested me. Administrators needing to justify their jobs were constantly in my classroom or calling pointless meetings to discuss pointless things. I spent less and less time teaching and more time filing out meaningless forms, responding to emails, and sitting through meetings. God, this was so frustrating to see happen to my history teacher when I was a student. Great teacher, got really good exam results, students liked him, parents liked him, and he was involved in running several extracurricular groups, hockey team, debating, cadets, and he was a boarding house master. He'd been teaching for 35 years, and yet he was having more and more random inspections of lessons, as OFSTED didn't like him because he was unconventional, and his head of department didn't like him because he had worked there 33 years longer and got better results. End result, after months of watching most of his lessons, they pointed at how laid back the lessons were and said he had a critical lack of discipline and asked him to leave, meaning he lost his job and, since he lived in the boarding houses, his home of the last 30 years. What they were actually doing there was not micromanagement, but they were looking for an excuse to fire him before he could retire so that they could save money. I have seen that happen to 2 separate teachers. My grandfather was a teacher and the school district he worked for went a different route and bought out teachers into early retirement, but that was over 30 years ago. Just happened to my mother a month ago. School started making her life hard for around 10 months before precisely 3 years before retirement, hoping she would quit. She put up a fight, but it ended up in court, where you suddenly have to prove that the proof used against you is false, as suddenly the school has all kinds of documents that they can magically pull out of their asses. Luckily it ended up in a settlement where she could keep a part of her retirement money that she worked for her whole life, but it's barely enough to pay her mortgage and have a fun life. I doubt she will find a new job at her age for her previous salary, so every month I buy her some Bitcoin, hopefully that eventually be enough to go on a nice holiday at some point in her life. 2 16-year-old kids were facing each other. I had the classroom seats in a U-shape and were silently challenging each other to fight while I was in the middle of a lesson. They suddenly jumped up from their chairs and came at each other with 8-inch knives with me in between them. I was pretty built, having been a stonemason's apprentice in college, to help pay my way through, but these kids were both bigger than me. Without thinking I grabbed each by their collars and shouted, "Sit down." I didn't start shaking until that evening. I was done a week later. Edit. Thank you for all the upvotes and a special thank you for the gold. Kind stranger. Skills for a teacher: be patient, be compassionate, be able to stop a knife fight in 2 words. Edit. I got 1000 upvotes. Thank you. 4. Be able to shake so hard you could vibrate through walls. I had a 6-year-old pull a knife on me while screaming, "I will kill you." This was the culmination of a lot of various incidents with the same kid. What was most infuriating was the parents claiming they had the sweetest little boy and that we, the school, must be liars for saying otherwise. Eventually he was transferred to a special school after we filed a report on the various incidents. I felt really bad for the kid because when he wasn't freaking out over something he would be the sweetest guy asking a ton of questions and participating in the activities, but he was highly prone to snapping into hysteria. The incident with the knife happened in this after school setting where the kids go to play and have fun. Apparently another kid had done something he disliked, so he was kicking and spitting on him. When I pulled him away, he ran straight to the drawer and found a little kitchen knife. Due to his size it was pretty easy to wrestle out of his hands, though, so no harm done. I guess dealing with shirty parents was what made me change my career. This exhausts me as a teacher. No, you don't know better just because you pushed a human out from between your legs. Teenagers can do that. Parents should trust trained professionals like doctors and teachers. When did this shift occur? Because when I was a kid, if my teacher told my mom I did something wrong, there wasn't a question, and I got punished anyway. I can anecdotally speak to why it may have shifted. When my mom was growing up, she had an alcoholic teacher who regularly drank during class and locked a girl in a custodial closet for 8 hours because she wouldn't stop fidgeting. Like Irel Trunchbull/Chokey scenario. When the kids went home to tell their parents, the ones who related the incident, this was a 3rd grade class, were accused of lying and conspiring to slander the teacher. He didn't get fired until a janitor smelled whiskey while cleaning one day, opened a drawer, and found the rest. Of course, being human, we can't have any semblance of sense or balance in our judgment, so authority figures are either untouchable gods or less trustworthy than a 6-year-old, with no middle ground. This is depressingly accurate.